Okay, welcome back. We're up to Masechtas Chagigah, page 11b, and we're starting the new chapter, the second chapter, Ein Darshan. So I've mentioned this many times before, and I'm going to say it again. For me, Masechtas Chagigah is the Masechta where we talk about connection, relationship, and it's divided into three chapters. First one, we learned a lot about the sages. They shared from themselves. As we've learned right in the beginning, they all shared as to what ticked them off, what made them cry, certain phrases in the Torah. And then we have seen a lot of different ways of learning and how they would interpret certain phrases from the Torah. And then we're moving over now to the second chapter. In the second chapter, we're going to learn a lot about Hashem, connecting to Hashem, knowing more about Him. And then we'll eventually get to the third chapter. The third chapter, we talk about purities and impurities. What does that have to do with connection? That has to do with connection because, unfortunately, when a person feels that he's holier than another person, that's the first thing that actually breaks connection, breaks relationship. So all these phrases and names, I'm Orthodox, I'm Reformed, all of these segregated sections because we are more stringent and I can't trust you on this and I can't trust you on that. That's all in the third chapter. But for now, we're going to try to get a little closer to Hashem and we're going to learn a lot about Him. And that's what this second chapter is all about. So let's dive right into it. The Mishna starts, Ein Darshan ba'arayos b'shloishu, which means you should not be learning. Darshan means not learning, it means giving a lecture, speaking about, or teaching. B'shloishu means with three people. So you should not be talking about ba'arayos. Arayos means adultery, people with whom we're allowed to marry, with whom we're not allowed to marry, all that halachas, all that laws, you should not be learning in public. You can only learn it for two people, not within three. And the Gomorrah is going to explain everything as to why. Now we're moving to the next part. Bereishit and how the world was created, talking in the details, the creation of the world, that you're not even allowed to learn two people together. Mishnah. What does Merkavah means? Merkavah means the literal translation means the chariot. It means like Hashem's chariot, Hashem's car. But it's not just His chariot. We're going to be talking about His dwelling, how His place is structured. And for that, you're not even allowed to learn the Yuchid alone, one person. And then the Mishna finishes off this, says, only if you are smart enough and you can understand it by yourself, then that's okay. Now, obviously, the Gomorrah is right away going to jump on this. You're contradicting yourself. You said you're not allowed to learn it even by yourself. And now you say only if you're allowed to understand it by yourself, then it's okay. Then what are you allowed or not allowed? We're just going to jump on this right away. We'll leave this for later. Now the Mishnah moves over to another section. The Mishnah says, anyone who stares in these four things, it would have been better for him not to have been born, not to come to this world. So I'm first giving literal translation, and then I'm going to come back and give it more meaning. So what's the four things a person should not be staring at? Mala mala, what's above. Mala mata, what's below. Mala fnim, what's inside. And mala ucher, what's from the outside. These are the four things that a person should not be staring at. If he is, then it would have been better for him not to have been born. Now, the Mishnah finishes off with the last statement, anyone who is not careful with the honor of his creator, he's also Rusalai Shalai. For him, it would also be better not to have come to the world, not to have been born, not to have come to this world. So I want to come back now to this last two things we learned. What does it mean? I want to say it cannot mean that someone who stares, he should die. Someone who's transgressing and he does want to stare as to what's above and what's below, he should die, because the Mishna doesn't say that. The Mishna could have clearly said, if you do that, you should die. The Mishna is not saying that. The Mishna says it's better for you not to have come to this world. What does it mean? So again, you're open for your translation. For me, this means that the Mishna is hinting to us. You see, there are certain people who stop living their life because they really need to know what's above, what's below, what's inside, what's outside, meaning what's outside of my boundaries as being a creation, as what my brain can comprehend and understand. They would stop their life to get to there. I'll give an example. There are monks who would go up on a mountain and not live their life, and not speak a word out of their mouth for a long period of time because they want to reach some higher levels of divine, of connection. So the Mishna is telling us someone who's mistakal, someone who stares, means someone who stops his life because he wants to get to somewhere where he's outside of his boundaries, what life gives you right now. You know what Mishna tells you? Not you should die. It's better for you not to have been born. You know why? Because before you were born, you were there. Before you were born, you were connected. You didn't have all these boundaries. So appreciate the fact that now that you do have a life, now that you are in a body, that you have these limitations that this body has. And the body cannot understand what's above, what's below, what's inside, or what's outside. The body is also just a creation. So know that it's not always that way. It's only for as long as you live. That's why the Mishnah tells us, saying, it would have been better for you not to have been born because you're giving away your hours of life, your time of life, to get what you're not having right now because you're alive. Something you had before you got born. So for you, it would have been better not to have been born. That's what the Mishnah is telling us. So it, in a way, it's to appreciate, yes, we want to connect more, understand where that feeling of connecting more comes because we love Hashem, because the way the world is structured and built, we are within boundaries, we are restricted, but because of that, also know that yes, there are things, there are limits where I can go, and there are things that I cannot go, and one day I'll get there. After I'll be out of my body, I'll be able to go to places where my body can't go. And now the Mishnah finishes off with the last thing, saying, anyone who's not careful with the honor of his creator should also have not been born. What is the Mishnah adding here? I would say the Mishnah is giving us a hint already, as in, if you want to dig yourself into a place where Hashem has limited us not to go there because we're in a body now, then you're disrespectful. For example, I'm going to use a very harsh example here. I know I'm being recorded, but nobody would mention, if they've ever, God forbid, seen their parents in a way that they weren't dressed appropriately, they wouldn't mention it. They wouldn't shame their parents talking about it. They'll shush it, a mistake happened, and they'll move on. You wouldn't shame your parents on things that is inappropriate to be discussing with them. And this is where the Mishnah is telling us, number one, the same things with Hashem. If you understand things and you want to start revealing it, understand that it's not appropriate. Hashem does not want everything to be revealed. Number two, it would have been better for you not to have been born. Why? Because you're not respecting the reality in what we are right now within the boundaries, where we don't have we do have these limitations in the boundaries as to how we live. I can bring another example for this. Sometimes people get very, very connected into the idea that Ein Oed Milvado, that everything we see around us is Hashem. That's what Kabbalah teaches us, that everything we see physically with our eyes, everything is a part of Hashem, And not only that, all of us, all human beings are Hashem. That's all we are, because there isn't anything else that exists. So if a person really takes that, he can go and steal from other people. Because he would say, I'm not stealing anything. It's Hashem taking from this bucket, putting into this bucket. I'm part of Hashem. He's part of Hashem. The object I took is Hashem. If it's all Hashem, then I can do whatever I want. And this is where the Torah teaches us, yes, you can do whatever you want, maybe, but in the physical world, there are things that with the moral compass, what's right and what's not right to be done. And therefore, here, there are things that belong to me, things that belong to you, and you shall not steal. You should not take something that's not yours. You should be living with honest. Now, of course, there are certain things that makes us, well, that doesn't sound very honest to me. Or if Hashem does exist, how come so many bad things happen? Of course, there's so many questions we can get out of that. But that's our challenge, is because we're in these boundaries. And this is what the Mishna is starting off with, saying that, number one, appreciate the fact you're alive. Appreciate that you have these boundaries, because they're only temporary. They're only for as long as we live. And we need to be able to surrender to that so that we can understand and be the best that we can be. So this is a beginning, just as a beginning as we're starting off here. But I want to start going into the Gomorrah. Just some thoughts. Any questions to hear, or anything you want to share as to what this means to you? Okay.
There's a lot on this little pasuk. I need to get
okay, so the Gomorrah is going to elaborate a lot on it. So let's dive into the Gomorrah and let's start dissecting this whole Mishnah piece by piece. So as we said before, we started off the Mishnah. The Mishnah says you should not be learning about the ideas, the laws of whom we're allowed to marry and whom we're not allowed to marry with three, only with two. Notice that the Mishnah is giving us a hierarchy. It starts off, this is with three. Talking about Masa Bereishit is higher than this. That's only two. And talking about Masa Bereishit, meaning in creation of the world, in creation of the world. The third one, talking about Hashem's dwelling, Hashem's chariot, that's not even with one. So there's a hierarchy as to how sensitive things get and how to be respectful to those. So the Gomorrah starts right away with our question that we pointed out in the Mishnah. The Gomorrah says, Amarta Bereishit, you say in the beginning, that we cannot learn about Hashem's dwelling, Hashem's chariot, even alone. And then you say, only if he's smart enough and he understands by itself, then it's okay. So are you allowed to think into it and to study it by yourself or not? So the Gomorrah answers, you have to twist a little bit the Mishnah. The Mishnah has to be read like this. You're not allowed to teach the halachas about with whom we're allowed to marry for three people, not with three people, for three people. Meaning it's four people together. You with four people, with another three people. The Lebe Masa Bereishit Lishnayim, you cannot teach Masa Bereishit, the creation of the world, for two, only for one. The Lebe Merkavah Leyuchet, and you cannot teach the chariot of Hashem to one person. Only if you can learn it yourself. You have a gift. Hashem is giving you some open eyes, an open mind, and you can understand things that maybe other people cannot. That's a gift that you get, but you cannot share that. You cannot teach that to other people. That only if he can learn it by himself. So let me go back to the Mishnah for a second. The Mishnah doesn't say that. The Mishnah says bishlashu, which means with three. And the Gomorrah twists it. It means 2, 3, lishlashu. So we have seen this many times before, where the Gomorrah twists a little bit the Mishnah, saying this is how the Mishnah is to be read. And the question we always have to have is, since this is over 1,500 years old, they had plenty of time to fix the Mishnah. Why haven't they fixed it? We have asked this before, right? So the answer to that is because there's a very big message here within the Mishnah with the way it's written. Sometimes we see the message, sometimes we don't. But again, it's open for interpretation for everyone for what that means. And this is where I want to say an interpretation as an explanation as to why the Mishnah kept saying it this way. And remember, the Mishnah has such a strong message to give us that you may even read the Mishnah so wrong that you would think that you're not allowed to learn it even for two people, right? Because it says bishloishu means with three people together, means that you can't learn it for two. You can only learn it for one. And the Mishnah says, no. It doesn't mean that. The Gomorrah explains it means you cannot learn to three people. Then why doesn't the Mishnah say that? I want to say what it means to me is that because if you want to start learning and connecting to Hashem, the you cannot exist. There cannot be a personal ego that is trying to play a role within this. And I'm going to give an example. If people argue, does Hashem exist or doesn't Hashem exist? Okay, there's a lot of proof that Hashem exists. But if a person has an ego here saying, if Hashem exists, that means there's a camera watching me wherever I go. He has created me for a purpose, and he's one day going to hold me accountable. Have I reached my purpose or not? He has given me choice. There's so much that comes into play if there's a God, if there's Hashem that does it. Versus if there's no Hashem, then I have no accountability. Everything's just by chance. It's so much easier than life. So if someone has that ego, then he's tainted. He can't ask the question if there's a God or not, because he's tainted. He has his own personal investment in it, that he's not really asking the question to get a real answer, to be the truth. So here, if you're going to get closer to Hashem, we need to become a place where we are only His creation. We have to understand our hierarchy. Where do we fit in with all of this? And then we can understand, okay, from here, I want to get to there. So where do we fit in all of this? Is Hashem created the world, and He created many levels of life. And us as humans, He created with the biggest level of life, the fourth. Okay, we can talk, we can reason, we have a moral compass that tells us what's right and what's not right, which makes us the biggest, the most worthy creation, the creature on this world. So to say that I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing, and let everyone just step on me is not right, because you're disrespecting Hashem. That's another thing we have learned in the Mishnah, saying if you disrespect your creator, it would have been better for you not to have been born. You have to respect yourself, knowing that you are a creature that God created for a purpose, for a reason, and that requires respect. But where does it go against another person? I'm not above, I'm not below. I'm equal to another person, because he's also created with that same image, with his purpose, with his meaning. So yes, I'm a nobody when it comes to Hashem. I'm equal when it comes to another person, but I'm way higher than any other creature that exists in this world. And I got to respect that. Now, from this place where I understand that I'm a creature that God created, I can now seek out, with the amount of intelligence that God has given us when He created us, to be able to reach out and want to get closer to Him, understand Him, and be able to have a better relationship with Him. But this is what's so important here, and which means that we ourselves cannot be counted when we come to teach other people, because we are only a conduit from Hashem. We're only one of His body parts. We get to a place where we're just coming to bring a message to the world as to deliver what we have been created to do, what we've been chosen to do, but us, ourselves, our own ego don't count. And it plays out in many, many ways in life. There's many levels in this as well. There's a level which is very, very low, where people nowadays are so backwards thinking that they think they can change their gender. They can become male to female, female to male. I am mentioning it here because it's something that goes on in the world today. And the first step for you to surrender is to surrender with what God created you. That will help you be the best that you can be. But then it goes to the next level to be able to surrender, which is another example where sometimes God gave someone a talent, a gift, but that person is ashamed to use that gift. For whatever reason, he's afraid that people will mock him if it doesn't work out well. They'll laugh at him, he makes a mistake. That's now his ego stopping him from surrendering to a gift that God gave him. It's the same thing. If God gave you a gift of a talent, you should be using it, which means don't be afraid if you mess up, because you are human, you will mess up. And that's how you created. And you don't take the blame when you mess up, because it's not you who are taking the credit when you do good as well. Why? Because it's just a gift you got. It's a talent that God created you with for you to use this talent to improve this world, to make this world a better place. Surrender to that. Which means don't take the compliments and feel good that you delivered. Of course, you can feel good that you delivered your task, but don't feel good that, wow, I'm powerful, I can sing. That's not your credit. But on the other hand, if you botched up, don't take the blame. That's Hashem's creation. He only gave me the gift up to this level, not more, not less. So that's another level of surrendering to what Hashem has created us. And we can go on and on. There's a lot of levels, and this even goes on to a place where it's not just to public, even personal, that a person should understand that he's worthy with his own inner voices, that he's worthy, and Hashem is his best fan. He lives everything along with him, and that a person can actually get to a place where he feels and realizes that all of his life's journeys has been joined with Hashem. Hashem has joined him in all the jokes that he heard and laughed and had a good time, and the same with all the bad things. And all the times he cried, Hashem cried along with him. So we can get to a place like that. But that only comes from being surrendered, from being understanding and accepting that this is how Hashem created me, and therefore I'm going to work with this and make the best that I can be in all these different levels. So this is my explanation as to why the Mishnah doesn't change it. Bishloishu is a strong message. You cannot teach it with 3 people, meaning teaching it to 3 people, because you don't count at this point. The same is when we talk about the creation of the world to 2 people, which is more sensitive, that can only be said only to 2 people, because at that point you for sure don't count. Okay, so let's move on. There's a lot to talk about it. I've touched on a ton of different different scenarios, different topics, and different philosophical debates. But let's start with the beginning, as in the intro, as to where we're going with this chapter of this Heilig. So now the Gomorrah wants to go in as to the reason. What's the reason for us not to be able to learn about these halachas for 3 people? Why 2 people? Yes. What's the limit? What's the reason behind it? So the Gomorrah starts off without any logical reason, only because the Torah dictates that way, with a phrase. The Gomorrah is going to start to find phrases in the Torah to see if that's why we think we can only learn for 3 people. And the end, the Gomorrah is going to leave all of that, and the Gomorrah is going to come back and leave it to common sense. There's just a common sense, if you're sensitive enough, that this is how you should be acting, and only learn it for 3 people. So let's start. You cannot learn it with 3 people. And remember, the Gomorrah itself, even though after they have corrected and say it means 2-3 people, the Gomorrah still repeats the same expression that the Mishnah has with 3 people, because there's a reason we're keeping it that way. And the Gomorrah now asks, my Tama, what's the reason that we can't teach it to more than 3 people? Or to 3 people, only to 2. Eli, maybe you would say, because it says in the Torah, ish, double, says twice, ish, which means a man, and calls sa'iroi besuroi, to sa'ir besuroi. You should not be getting close with your flesh. This is where the Torah commands us the halachas, the laws of with whom we're allowed to marry and not. So ish, the Torah says twice the word ish, so that means 2. Sa'ir besuroi, we're talking now of another person, of his flesh, of his body. God, so that's another person. So for that, the Gomorrah and that the Torah says, you should not get close to reveal your body. So maybe this is the reason, because this is 3. We have ish, which means 2. Sa'ir besuroi is the 3rd person. So the Gomorrah says that can't be the reason. Why? Because we have many times in the Torah when the Torah uses the term ish, and it doesn't mean only 3 people. So the Gemara says, Eila ma'atu, on this, when the Torah says that's it, ish ki kalo elikof, which means a man that will curse Hashem. Obviously, it doesn't mean 3 people have to curse him. When one person curses him, it's already the Torah is talking about. The same thing, ish asher yitem mizarei lemoilach. When a person would take one of his kids and give it away for avodah zarah, for idolatry. Over there, you would also say that it has to be 2 people or 3 people. Huchanama, it cannot be so. That's even one person already transgresses it. So what does it mean when the Torah repeats itself saying ish? Elohana, you know what that means? It comes to teach us that not just ish, which normally means a yid, a Jew, it also means a Gentile. Ish, any person. This is what the Torah talks to with the laws, even on Gentiles, that they are not allowed to get married brothers and sisters, or to a married woman, or to all these laws. It's talking to a Gentile too. This is on all human beings. They're also obligated not to curse Hashem. They're also obligated not to worship idolatry, worship avodah zarah, just like Yidden. These are part of the 7 mitzvahs, the Noach laws. So, therefore, the Torah uses ish, and therefore the same thing here. So, therefore, the Torah uses the term ish by us because they are also warned. So they're also not allowed to marry certain people like a Jew is not allowed to. So the Gemara has said this is not the reason. So what else could be the reason that we don't teach it to 3? Because it says in another pusik, Ishmartem es mishmarti. You should guard my guarding. This is basically the little translation, but it means you should guard my Torah, my mitzvahs, my things that I tell you to guard. The word mishmartem is a plural, try, that says 2. Mishmarti, that's singular, that's chat, that's 1. So when the Torah says, that you should keep my guardings, you should not be doing any of these ta'ayvus. Ta'ayvus means, I don't have a nicer translation for it. It means things that you do that are disgusting. You should not be doing these disgusting things that I don't know, that the Torah forbids to do. So maybe here you would say it means 3 people, because it says Ishmartem, which is an expression of plural, and Mishmarti, which is an expression of singular, so it means at least 2, and 1, it means 3. Someone says that cannot be the reason, because Elimi after the Sid, it also says Ishmartem es Shabbos. You should keep Shabbos, and it says it in a plural expression, Ishmartem. So only 2 people have to keep Shabbos. 1 is allowed to transgress Shabbos? Of course not. And when it says Ishmartem es mitzvahs, and you should keep all the mitzvahs in the Torah, that's also in plural. Or where it says Ishmartem es mishmeres hakodesh, you should be keeping the holy gardens of being a holy nation. Of course it means each individual of us. It doesn't mean plural because the expression is used from Huchanama. The same thing here, that it cannot be, that this is the reason why we should not be teaching to 3 people, because even 1 should be forbidden. Eile Umar of Asher, so the Gemara at this point gives up. We're not going to go to a phrase, and we're coming back to common sense. And we're going to explain as to why shouldn't a rabbi, a teacher, teach these laws to 3 students at once. What does it mean that he shouldn't teach these laws to 3? You cannot teach. The Sisra Erois means when there is a contradiction, when there's a question, is this type permitted or this type not permitted? That you cannot teach for 3. My Tama, what's the reason? It's common sense. Why? It goes like this. By try, when there are 2 people, when 2 people sit in front of a rabbi, One of the students would ask a question for the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would be busy answering to this one student. The Idach and the second student, he has no one to talk to, he has nothing to do, so he would listen in because he's going to learn. He's going to follow along the conversation because there's only two people here. But there's three people, and one person asks a question from the Rebbe. One asks a question, and the other two would start talking between themselves. What's going to happen? And they would not listen in as to how the Rebbe had answered the question for that one student. And they can, God forbid, come to permit something that is forbidden because they have not listened in. They have been busy talking between themselves. So therefore, we should not teach it for three people at once, only to two, because the other two may not listen in on every question because they can be busy with themselves. So the Gemara asks, if this is a concern, call Torah nama. You should not teach anything in Torah to three people. If this is your concern that the other two may not listen in, then you should never teach anything in Torah to three, only to two, so that nobody would miss a word. So the Gemara answers, no. There's a separate reason why we do this to this laws. Arayot shani. It's different when it comes to these laws. Why? The Umar, because we have learned Guzl v'arayos. Guzl, which means stealing. V'arayos in these laws with whom we're allowed to marry. Nafsha shel udam mechamdan and. A person has a special desire to these things. The body of a person, nafsha, if I can just press out here, is the lowest level of the soul. It's not the body, it's the animalistic part of the life of the body that has these desires that it wants to steal, it wants to live with people that the Torah forbids to, it wants to do things, and therefore people would be eager. They would have their own personal interest here invested, and therefore if they don't listen into what the Rebbe teaches exactly, they can come to do things that they're not allowed to do. You have to really listen in to know exactly what they're allowed and what not allowed to do, even though when they have their own desires. So the Gemara says, okay, so you're saying there's two things. There's stealing and there's arayos. Why not for stealing? Then when you teach about the laws of stealing, you should also not be allowed to for three, only for two. So the Gemara answered, but there's still one more difference. Arayos, when it comes to living with people that we're not allowed to live, a person has a yetzer hara, even if he's in front of it, he sees it, or if he doesn't see it right now. Gezel befunov nafshe yitzra, gezel to steal, you don't have that inclination, you don't have that desire when you don't see it. Only when you see it, you suddenly, hey, I want it, I like it, I want this. But if you don't see it, you don't have that desire. So therefore, it's okay to learn from more people. You don't need it. So therefore, when it comes to the laws with whom we're allowed to marry and whom not, that cannot be taught for three people because people have their own personal agendas, own personal desires. And even if they're not in front of it right now, they're still in a place where they have this inclination, they have this yetzer hara, and therefore it should not be taught for more than two. I want to point out something here. Whom are we talking about here? The Torah is not talking about people on the street who would do whatever they want. We're talking about sages that sit and study the Torah day and night. They're connected to Hashem. We're not talking of someone who's having a yetzer hara and does bad things, that doesn't ask anyone. We're talking of people who want to learn. So why shouldn't they not be allowed to learn more than three? They're holy people. They're tzaddikim. We're not talking people on the street here. And the answer is that our biggest strength that a person has is to understand and know his weaknesses. Even though I am not that bad person on the street, but I'm capable of being it because I'm a human being. If I want to know what me as a human being is capable, I can look around and see the most worst monster that ever existed in the world and say, I'm capable of being that. And I can look on the other side, the most righteous and holiest and honored person that ever existed. I'm capable of being that. When I understand my weaknesses, I know where to put my fences, where to protect myself, so that I can win. Once I've passed my fences, once I've been in a place where I'm already exposed, I need a lot of miracles to actually save me at that point, not to fall through, not to sin. So this is what the Gomorrah is telling us and teaching us here right now. For the most righteous, for the people who sit and learn, for the sages, you should not teach it for more than 3 because you cannot trust yourself. You should know your weaknesses, and this is your strength. This is how you get through life. This is a very, very message here that we see from what the Torah is showing us. I think we should stop here. Yeah, I think we can stop here. We have reached a lot. We discussed a lot. Anything you want to share? Anything you want to ask?
I'm definitely have to revisit this. There's a lot of questions that I need to clarify first.
Yes, there is a lot here. There's a lot. And it's only the intro to this chapter. We're going to be unpacking layers and layers of stuff about life and meanings of things. And thank you so much for joining me in this journey. And we'll see you next time. Do I stop the recording? Okay. Bye now.